Okay, go ahead.
Then Judah said to Onan, lie with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty to her as a brother-in-law, to produce offspring for your brother. But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. So whenever he lay with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground and kept from producing offspring for his brother. What he did was wicked in the Lord's sight, so he put him to death also. So now the Lord put Ur to death because he was a wicked man. Now he puts Onan to death because he wouldn't produce offspring for Ur. Judah then said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, live as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up. For he thought, he may die too, just like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. When Judah had recovered from his grief, he went up to Timnah, to the men who were shearing his sheep, and his friend Hera, the Adullamite, went with him. When Tamar was told, your father-in-law is on his way to Tamnar to shear his sheep, she took off her widow's clothes, covered herself with a veil to disguise herself, and then sat down at the entrance to Inium, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that though Shelah had now grown up, she had not been given to him as his wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. Not realizing that she was his daughter-in-law, he went over to her by the roadside and said, come now, let me sleep with you. And what will you give me to sleep with you, she asked. I'll send you a young goat from my flock, he said. Will you give me something as a pledge until you send it? She asked. He said, what pledge should I give you? Your seal and its cord, and the staff in your hand, she answered. So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. After she left, she took off her veil and put on her widow's clothes again. Meanwhile, Judah sent the young goat by his father, and the Adullamite, his friend the Adullamite, in order to get his pledge back from the woman. But he did not find her. He asked the men who lived there, where is the shrine prostitute who was beside the road at Iniam? There hasn't been any shrine prostitute here, they said. So he went back to Judah and said, I didn't find her. Besides, the men who lived there said, there hasn't been any shrine prostitute here. Then Judah said, let her keep what she has, or we will become a laughing stock. After all, I did send her this young goat, but you didn't find her. About 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law Tamar is guilty of prostitution, and as a result she is now pregnant. Judah said, bring her out and have her burned to death.
Oh my goodness.
As she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law. I am pregnant by the man who owns these, she said. And she added, see if you recognize whose seal and cord and staff these are. Judah recognized them and said, she is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah, and he did not sleep with her again. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand. So the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it in his wrist and said, this one came out first. But when he drew back his hand, his brother came out, and she said, so this is how you have broken out. And he was named Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his wrist, came out, and he was given the name Zerah.
Very good. There's some interesting history in the Bible, didn't they? I've never heard of babies coming out in part, sticking an arm out or a leg out when they're twins. And what are we reading in Matthew? Chapter 10, 21 to 42. You took the bookmark out. Okay, we're going to start Matthew chapter 10, verses 21 to 42. And it begins on these little numbers right here. It's starting right in the middle of the paragraph. Strange. We read yesterday about be on your guard, they'll hand you over to a local. He's talking about being persecuted for belonging to Christ yesterday. And so we're carrying on. And it's kind of like talking about days like now, really. It says, brothers will betray brothers to death, and a father his child. Children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. All men will hate you because of me, but he who stands firm to the end will be saved. When you are persecuted in one place, flee to another. I tell you the truth, you will not finish going through the cities of Israel before the Son of Man comes. A student is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for the student to be like his teacher, and the servant like his master. If the head of the house has not been called Beelzebub, how much more the members of his household? If the head of the house has been called Beelzebub, I said has not, how much more the members of his household? So do not be afraid of them. There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden will not be made known. What I tell you in the dark, speak of in the daylight, and what is whispered in your ear, proclaim it from the rooftops. Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both body and soul in hell. There's that hell again. He mentions it a lot in scriptures. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from the will of your Father. And even the very hairs on your head are numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. He's counting backwards on your head, eh? Sorry, that was not nice. Whoever acknowledges me before men, I will also acknowledge him before my Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before men, I will disown him before my Father in heaven. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And anyone who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And anyone who does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. He who receives you receives me, and he who receives me receives the one who sent me. Anyone who receives a prophet because he is a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And anyone who receives a righteous man because he is a righteous man will receive a righteous man's reward. And if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones because he is my disciple, I tell you the truth, he will certainly not lose his reward. There's a lot of stuff that Jesus says that's really hard. It's a big pill to swallow. It's really hard to understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we always talk about peace and love and all that stuff, and we worship and we call Father God, Creator. He loves us, and Jesus came to bring peace to the world and reconcile us to God. But here Jesus is saying with his own words that because of him, there's going to be division in homes between father, son, mother, daughter, and so forth. And enemies will be the members of your own household. This is so sad. And, we're at an age almost where we see it. I know many people whose children have grown and despise their parents and all of the things their parents stood for. And many parents abandoning their children. There are horrible numbers of people abandoning their children.
Shunning their responsibility.
That's right. There's a lot of stuff in here. It's probably worthwhile reading this chapter over again in your spare time, slower, and kind of pondering it and thinking about it, because we're just doing a Bible in a year, so we don't have time to really dig in.